Hi there, Megan Thompson here with Megan Thompson Coaching. And if you are parenting a sensitive child who is kicking, screaming, yelling, and really struggling with managing their big behaviors, and you tend to fight fire with fire, then listen up. It is time to double down on what works and shift out of this dynamic for good. Now, a kiddo who is struggling with managing their big emotions is going to demonstrate big, intense behaviors, right? Now, those intense behaviors might be internal, where your child is shutting down and refusing and really having quite the hard time with communicating, where, it's knock, 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 who's there? Try to pull things out of your kiddo and get them to follow through on answering you about their emotional intensity and telling you what's really bothering them. Or you might experience a child who is exploding, right? Like daily meltdowns, losing it, or you find yourself walking on eggshells because no matter what, you can't get anything right. Your kiddo is just chop, chop, let's go. Everything's got to be perfect, and I need everything to work out exactly the way that I am expecting, or else, right? And if you find yourself responding to your child's behavior that you'd view as demanding with demanding back, wait a minute, hang on, who's boss, right? At the end of the day, even if that reactivity is after a long time of trying to be patient, I want us to dive into this focus today, because as a human being with needs and expectations like you are as a parent, it is totally relevant that if you are stuck and a-okay that you're stuck in this meltdown cycle with your child. And here at MTC, we help parents bust out of that cycle in as little as 8 weeks, right? So it is so important and crucial to know that when you are using your own emotion management skills, it is easier for you to be patient with your kiddo. And yet, if you have a lot of experience being the boss or being highly effective, and you highly value efficiency, where you expect everything to move smoothly, and when it doesn't, it feels initially frustrating, and that's part of your personality, then this can be harder to manage day in and day out without a certain specific set of tools, right? So I want to talk about what you might have already tried to turn this around and where you might be stuck, right? Because one of the things that we know as parents is that we're raising children. That means that kids are not going to be perfect. It's going to get messy. It's going to feel hard, right? So the first couple of years of parenting a sensitive kid who seems to, have an emotional intensity from 0 to 60, and then to 90, and then to 100 and boiling over, might have you feeling like this is going to pass, and you might presume that you can just white knuckle your way through by trying to stay patient and holding in your tongue and choosing not to yell or get frustrated. You might have been really, really good at that by around the age of 2, 3, maybe even 4. And then once 4 rolls around, and you notice that your child is not able to manage their behavior at the developmentally expected level, and your child is still having meltdowns beyond age 4 on a daily basis or multiple times a day basis, I don't care who you are and how patient, you can be Mother Teresa, how patient you are, it is going to eventually wear on you, right? Because this dynamic is demonstrating a clear skill set for you that needs to shift, and a skill set for your child that needs to shift. And so you're likely trying to figure this out, right? Do I need to implement more structure? Is my child capable of tolerating emotion management skills? Do I need to be stronger? Maybe my kiddo needs traditional parenting. I didn't feel aligned with that at the beginning because I feel like my kid needs to learn how to manage their emotions on their own. So I didn't really want to use external motivators like sticker charts and timeouts and counting to 3 or anything like that, right? Doesn't matter where you fall in your initial philosophy of parenting, but at some point when your kiddo starts losing it, in your heart, you know that it's not effective to use external motivators like that, but you might have eventually gone in that direction, or you might have a spouse who is more leaning to that, and you're starting to wonder, well, is my method ever going to really work? So maybe I should start to listen to my spouse and move in that direction, right? So the doubt creeps in. You start to doubt yourself. You start to doubt your own sense of personal empowerment as an adult in a home where you don't feel safe, right? Now, I'm not necessarily speaking entirely about physicality. Obviously, if your kid's hitting you, there's a part of you that feels unsafe in that dynamic. But I'm talking about psychological safety. If your child is losing it on a daily basis and you don't know how to help your child, that feels psychologically unsafe. You might feel inadequate as a mom or inadequate as a dad, feeling incapable of breaking out of this pattern. Though it is unlikely you feel inadequate in every avenue of your life, right? And it's drastically impacting your ability to get to work or to engage in friendships and to, contribute to your community, go to church, whatever. And so what happens is that there's this separation between yourself as a parent when you're at the end of your rope and yourself in general, right? And it becomes this secret, right? For this shameful experience when your child is having a meltdown over and over and over again, because as a parent, you're a problem solver, you're effective. I mean, many of our clients, or 70% of them, work in the helping field. Teachers, doctors, nurses, therapists, right? And so that means that you might even have a sense of understanding of what it takes to be a parent who is raising an emotionally intelligent child in today's world. And you might be even very effective at advising other people who don't have highly sensitive kids at solving this problem for their own home. And yet in your home, your child is struggling, and they might be only struggling in your home. They might be demonstrating safe behavior in the school setting or at Scouts. We hear this all the time. And what happens is that eventually starts to wear on you. You start to wonder, you start to decrease your child's world, you start to decrease the amount of opportunities that you give your child to experience the day-to-day world at some point, right? And you might be wondering whether or not it's even worth it to go to the park if your kid takes 20 to 30 minutes to get out the door because they have an interest in something else and they don't realize what's happening around the corner in the future, right? And they're not able to put themselves into the future. They're staying so locked into the can't, won't, no way that they start to get demanding. Now, you can decide to completely back off on all demands and start being, there's a trend on low demand parenting. There's especially with big picture thinkers, children who are visionary, who have very, noticeable, they're able to notice small details. They're very wise. You might think that means that your child can't handle demands and you need to back off. Now, part of you realizes that that's not necessarily sustainable long-term in society. Your child is going to need to tolerate at any given day where there's a rule, even if they don't want it. So there needs to be exposure to expectations. And part of you also wants to relate to the world the way that most of the world is designed. You might want to be able to get to work on time because setting no demands means that you would have to homeschool, or setting no demands would mean you would need to be late or that you would need to cancel a lot of expectations. And then the question becomes, when does my kid end up doing their own laundry and putting themselves to bed, right? And not being able to see that, so creates a frustration, right? And so this swings you to the other end of the pendulum where you say, you know what? My kid needs to suck it up. Real world's happening right now. They need to learn. They need to learn how to tolerate, because I want my child to not just survive childhood, I want them to thrive in childhood. Because if they're not focusing on thriving now, then we'll be focusing on surviving in adolescence. So then your mind, you might wonder, do I just need to create this regimented structure and expectation where I'm the boss and my kiddo needs to listen, especially if they're thinking that they're the boss and they're telling me what to do every dang minute? Now, if you're anything like me, regimented structure is not your favorite thing. Personally, I have people around me that help me stick to a schedule and a structure, and and that works for me, but I prefer her to be spontaneous within reason, right? I mean, we get up at a general amount of time. I do my morning practices and I set my values and expectations for myself so that I can be the best parent that I can be and lead the team here and do what I need to do. And it's also true that I appreciate variety. So, I don't have, strict, stringent rules in a lot of my days, especially not in parenting. I tend to prefer to go with the flow. And in raising a sensitive kiddo who has emotion management skills, that's really, really useful. And one of the things that we find with our clients is that once you learn these skills, you can do whatever you want on the whim of a Saturday or a Sunday in the regular everyday routine. Your child can ebb and flow, and you don't necessarily need to be entirely in control of their environment as a parent. You can have them, go to full-time school or sign them up for activities and all kinds of opportunities available to you. And it really is the world is your oyster in this respect, because every family is different and every family has different needs. And so what I find to be most effective to highlight this is really noticing that it's not effective to fight fire with fire. As much as I would love to do that, I think my deep innate trait is to be the boss. I think it really does set everything up for failure, and it's certainly not the way that I parent, and it's not the way that I think is most useful. But it's also what I find is that when parents are able to slow down, when we teach our clients to slow down in order to speed up, you can teach your child to stop self-sabotaging too, because it doesn't feel good to vent your emotions all over the ones that you love. So your kiddo doesn't feel good trying to be in control of every single thing. They don't feel good not being able to solve their own problems. They're miserable in that. And when you really truly decide that your child is miserable, being quote unquote the boss or trying to expect themselves to be in charge of everything, it's so much pressure for a 7, 8, 9-year-old. I mean, it is just the high level of irritability that you need to carry all day long in order to present yourself as somebody who is irked by every single thing. I mean, that's just miserable. It's miserable life, right? So when you decide no child was put on this earth to be miserable, your child is no different, then you get to decide that your child's behavior right now is not their personality. It's a symptom of the meltdown cycle that your family is in. And so what we get to do now is then decide, okay, great, let's break us out. Let's bust out of this prison here. And I want to focus on what works to do that. First things first, we just did that. You got to change the way that you're looking at your kid's behavior. You got to change your presumption of your child's personality and their demeanor. And you got to look at this from a lens of understanding neuroscience and your child's capacity for change. And you need to play. You need to change how you react with your child. You need to be playful with your child. You need to respond differently to your child's emotional intensity so that your child follows you and feels capable of having choices in their life without deciding their choice is to refuse. All right, so this is really important when we think about children who are perceived to have demand problems, avoidant of demands, or children who are considered oppositional or strong-willed or perseverative, or any sort of negative label word to characterize their behavior, right? Instead, what we want to do is look at non-pejorative language to help you see that your kiddo is struggling with skill gaps. They don't know how to communicate effectively. They're having a hard time demonstrating the empathy that they feel inside. They have a really big challenge managing frustration, overwhelm, and disappointment, to name a few. So when you look at it like that, then you can completely change, right? We go from, obviously, if you think about the world as a glass half empty, you won't be able to solve the problem. You'll just be sucking it dry and then it goes away, right? But if you look at the glass as half full, then there's more to pour in. Then you can meet your child's needs differently. Now, I know that you are typically an optimistic thinker, which is great. And in this dynamic, it's likely really taken a toll. So that means that obviously your own perception of what you're capable of needs to change. You are the change agent for your child. You are raising a sensitive kiddo. That means that they are only going to change through you. So your ability to be playful, your ability to change how you perceive your kid, super critical to highlight and to shift first before you start teaching your child without shame. Now, you and I both know that yelling at your child creates a dynamic where your child feels shameful, or telling your child that you're in charge the entire time by saying, nope, we're going to do it this way and I don't want to hear it. And here's the expectation. And this is just exactly how it's going to go. And no ifs, ands, or buts. And do you want to know what's the what's the consequence if you don't follow through, right? All of that keeps your kid on a leash and boxed in, and it's reactive for you because you got to be in more control and you're trying to fight fire with fire, right? So we want to slow that down. We want to decrease that need for your child as well as decrease that need for you to have every single thing go the way that you want. And then you can teach your child without shame, because in that dynamic, you're showing your child they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know how to manage their behavior. So you need to manage their behavior. And that ends up perpetuating the cycle. And you feel like crap when that happens, right? You don't like parenting this way. And so I want you to really focus on this week laying down that belief that you need to over control your kid. No, they can absolutely change this dynamic. You need to teach them strategically, right? You need to help their brain focus on resilience and playfully focusing on being capable of changing their behavior. And then being able to do that more effectively is going to be critical. All right. So I truly hope that you have the opportunity to dive into this concept this week effectively. If you want more support for that and you haven't watched our masterclass, go to meganthompsoncoaching.com/5 steps and really dive in to the 5 shifts that are necessary to bust out of this pattern. You have to be clear on what it takes to change the dynamic. And if you have moved through our shifts and you are still at the end of your rope, then I encourage you to get on the line with our team, right? But first today, we're going to highlight our free masterclass. Let's go ahead and get after it. All right. Speak to you soon on our next show. And again, go to meganthompsoncoaching.com/5 steps. And we look forward to speaking with you.